Well, thank you everybody for joining us today for our webinar. And our guest today is Dixie Dixon, one of the most energetic photographers I have ever met. And her energy is only exceeded by the quality of her photography. She's an amazing fashion photographer. As a matter of fact, she just released a book on Amazon, Fashion and Lifestyle Photography. So in addition to watching how she uses Luminar, run over to Amazon and take a look at that book. But Dixie, thank you so much. You're a Nikon ambassador, you're a Luminar luminary, and just a really fun person to be around. So I'm really looking forward to your presentation today. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, so, this is just a link to my website, dixiedixon.com. And on Instagram, it is under I am Dixie Dixon. So if you want to see all of my current work, it is all available there. And, today I would love to just talk a little bit about fashion photography, because that is my passion, obviously. For me, photography has been a lifelong love affair. I've been doing this literally about 10 years now, and this has always been my dream job. I have only had different jobs in photography. So I was a Little League photographer. I shot weddings in college. I shot portraits. And literally, I started my business in college. And it was interesting because I ended up graduating and I applied for an internship. It was a business internship, and ended up getting it. And then at the advice of my mentor, I ended up turning it down because he said, if you're going to pursue photography, now is the time. So I decided to turn it down, ended up going straight into photography, shooting friends, family, anyone that would pose for me. And so literally I've been shooting nonstop ever since. It has been quite a fun adventure and quite a wild ride. And photography is just one of those things that just creatively inspires me. It's the outward expression of inward significance. And that's what I really love about it, is just expressing the soul of the person that I'm shooting. Basically, my first big break out of college was shooting for a TV show. It was interesting. It was a TV show on HDNet called Get Out. And it was funny because I never had seen myself or thought of myself as a swimwear photographer, but I ended up booking this job by meeting a producer that was looking for a still photographer. So I ended up going for 4 years and shooting for this TV show. So we went to places like Miami and Puerto Rico, Ibiza, Spain, basically all over the world shooting swimsuit models. And it was quite a fun adventure. And it's really kind of where I discovered my style as a photographer. And it really kind of showed how I could connect with people. I think that's a really big part of photography, is that connection and really connecting with whoever it is you're shooting. You can see in the eyes of the person that you're shooting if they were comfortable in that moment. And so I go to great lengths to really connect with my subjects. So now I shoot a lot of different commercial work for different jewelry companies and different lifestyle brands. Like I do a lot of work for Nikon, shooting a lot of their ads and things like that. They're definitely a fun company to shoot for. This is a recent shot of this dog's name is actually Dixie, believe it or not. It was meant to be. And, so I do a lot of different kinds of magazine work as well. And really today, I really wanted to get into secrets of a fashion photographer. So I'm going to show you guys some of the things that I do on a normal basis to create cool fashion images and what ends up going into these different productions and fashion shoots, so that you can hopefully apply that to your work, whether you shoot weddings or portraits or anything like that. So I guess we'll go ahead and dive in. Do you have any questions, Abba? Anything?
I think we're good at this point. I think people
Cool.
are just eager to hear, to learn from you. So
Cool.
I'm going to let you run with it.
All right. That sounds great. I'll roll with it.
Oh, I will interrupt you. I'm going to ask you to pull your mic a little bit further away.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a little bit close to your mouth. And so just the enthusiasm is overpowering the capabilities of the mic.
Is that better?
Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, good. Sorry, it probably was like I was screaming in y'all's ears. Okay, perfect. So these are the basics of what go into crafting a fashion image. It looks like a lot, but these are pretty simple once you get into it. So I'm going to get into each of these aspects in order to craft an image. And keep in mind that it's really fun, like editing is such a big part of what I do. And I created these cool Skylum presets with Luminar. And you can see how this goes with my style. So you can actually use these presets on your photos to create some cool fashion looks. So I'm going to show you guys those at the end and how to use them. Because it's kind of the whole deal from the production to the editing, it all goes together. So let's talk a little bit about style. So your style is really one of the most important aspects of you as a photographer. Your style isn't really something that you have to go out and find. It's really something that already exists within you. And basically, the more that you shoot, the more that you will see your style unfold organically. So it's really not something that you have to force or anything like that. It's really something that just comes through shooting a ton. So I do a lot of personal work. This is a recent personal shoot that I did in Montana with a really amazing wildlife photographer, David Yarrow. And we did some really cool shots with these animals. And this is just personal work, really helps me discover my style and explore photography. So you should always be shooting personal work. That's really the best way to make it as a photographer, is to be always shooting that personal work. Man, it was incredible how this bobcat made eye contact with me. I think I got chills going down my spine. It was pretty incredible experience. So ultimately, when you go into shooting a personal work that really goes with your style, you have to consider your vision first. So what is the vision for the images that you're going for? For this one, it was a cool Amelia Earhart style editorial. So we had this beautiful plane and great model. So it all comes together, with that black and white image. So for every shoot that I do one of these vision boards. Basically, a vision board helps you communicate your vision, obviously. So for instance, the top row is the sort of lighting I was going for. The middle row is the makeup that I was going for, and then the bottom row is the hair that I was going for a particular shoot. So basically, this helps the entire team get on the same page when going into a shoot, because the truth is, you can tell a makeup artist, hey, I want natural makeup, but until everyone has different ideas of what natural makeup is. Some people it's completely nude. Some people it's a little bit more smoky eyes. So really and truly, it helps to communicate with pictures, since it's a really visual industry. So you can see how it can kind of translate here into the images. So currently I'm shooting with the Nikon D850. It's an incredible stills camera and video camera. You can see the kind of detail that comes to life in using this camera with the Nikkor lenses. I shot this with the Nikkor 105 millimeter. You can see how you can see every single pore, which is just amazing. And this is 100% zoomed in. So it's just crazy how you can see every eyelash. So this is a current shot of my other gear. It's not been updated with the D850 yet, but I currently only use prime lenses. I just love primes because I think they're crazy sharp. They create beautiful bokeh in the background, and then I tend to kind of like to be my own walking zoom. So I can walk forward to, get a close-up shot, and I can walk backwards to get a wide angle shot. I feel like the act of that tends to make me more creative in the process. So I always wear a hat when I shoot. For some reason, I feel more creative when I wear a hat. These are some of my favorite lenses. Like I said, the primes, the 35 is an incredible lens for wide angle for capturing, environments or models within the environments. The 58 is a great portrait lens for full length type of imagery. The 85 is also really great for beautiful bokeh if I want to do 3/4 length. And then the 105 is really great for headshots. So that tends to be my favorite headshot lens, the 105. So let's go over camera settings really quick. These are the basic settings that I shoot with on a normal basis. I tend to keep my aperture pretty wide open, a couple stops up from the widest, so f3.5. And that way the model's in focus, and then the background just kind of falls out of focus really nicely. The shutter speed wise, I usually shoot at 1/250th or higher. The reason is I tend to be pretty candid with my subjects. I move around a lot, so I like to freeze the motion unless I'm trying to get a cool blurred shot. So I tend to shoot there, and then usually ISO 400 or lower. However, these cameras today, you can shoot pretty high ISO and it looks amazing. And then as I'm shooting, I'm always trying to move my focus point to the eyes so that the eyes are tack sharp. So basically, I will compose the image and then move the single focus point to the eyes of the model that I'm shooting. So that's the kind of basic settings that I use. This is just a quick time lapse of what I call the dream team. When I was first starting, I literally only, it was me and a model or me and a portrait client. So it was just us two on set. And I have grown into shooting productions for advertising agencies and brands and things like that. So they expect that you have a go-to team that you can hire for the shoots. So basically, I grew this team on a website called modelmayhem.com where you can kind of work with other creatives, makeup artists, hairstylists, wardrobe stylists, all these different people that can really take your images to the next level because they're really talented at what they do. So if you're able to work with them, you can really create something greater than you would have been able to create alone. So that's what I really love about photography is that collaboration aspect and getting to work with a team. So now I work with a team on every shoot, and that's my assistant, Nico. So I always work with a team. This is a recent shoot for Kathy Ireland. I love shooting backlit a lot. It's just a really great way to shoot, especially for creating beautiful, flattering portraits. I love the lens flare type of look. Really nice. And within the software, it makes it easy to kind of dehaze it just a little bit and really bring out the beauty of the image. Here are some other shots we did of Kathy with the Nikon camera. Just really fun stuff here. And then we also did one shot of her for AIDS organization. So this started out as a personal shoot and turned it out into a big collaborative experience. So let's talk about lens selection a little bit, because I think this is a really big part of what I do and can really take your headshots to the next level. So currently, I shoot most of my headshots with a longer focal length lens. So for instance, if you guys have a 70-200 type of lens, instead of taking your headshot at 70 millimeters, zoom it all the way into 200 millimeters, back up, and then take your headshot. Because what that's going to do is create a beautiful compression effect with whoever it is, their face that you're shooting. So their features will stand out and they'll look a lot more beautiful in the frame. You can see how if you use a 35 millimeter here on the left, how it kind of distorts her nose, her forehead looks a little bit big. It's just not quite as flattering of a look, even though she's beautiful in every image. But then the 85, you can see how it's a little bit more flattering. The 85 is probably the minimum focal length lens that I would use to create a gorgeous headshot. And then the 180 or like a 200 millimeter, all of a sudden it's like, bam, that is a gorgeous headshot. So I would always try to use a longer lens like the 105 or the 200 millimeter to take headshots. So just keep that in mind. It's really important. You can see how it really blurs the background out really beautifully. It draws more emphasis to your subject and really makes her stand out. So these are all shot with longer lenses. This was shot with the 105 millimeter 1.4, and you can see how it just blurs the background really nicely. Also a longer lens draws more emphasis to your subject, and that's kind of how I tend to shoot almost everything. Just because it has such a cool look. So hair and makeup is a big part of fashion photography. And, even when I was shooting portraits and I was shooting senior pictures, all kinds of different things, I would always have them go get their hair and makeup done at like the MAC counter. I think it's like free to do that. So even when I wasn't shooting fashion and stuff, I always tried to have my client get their hair and makeup done just because it saves you so much time in the back end of the editing and retouching and everything. So hair and makeup wise, there's quite a lot of tips to hair and makeup. I always, try to go more natural just because that's my style. But if your style is more avant-garde, then you can go kind of, more avant-garde with the hair and makeup. And keep in mind with hair and makeup also, if you're going more smoky and more intense with the eyes, you'll usually want to go with a lighter lip color, and vice versa. So if you're going with a really heavy lip, you might want to go with a lighter eyes, not so heavy on the eyes. That's just kind of a rule of thumb. And then one thing that is really important too is a lot of times I'm shooting backlit. So this is backlit by the sun. And I've noticed that, you know, sometimes the little peach fuzz on people's faces will tend to show up with the backlighting. And so one thing that you can have your models do before a shoot is literally take one of these razors and just kind of take these to the edges of their face and just take off the little peach fuzz so that it doesn't show and you don't have to edit that later in post-production. Usually, obviously, I have the makeup artist do this, but these are really great tools. So you don't have to deal with peach fuzz in post-production. I always love these tips because it just saves so much time. So I like to mention them.
Those are great. Because that's one of the challenges. You're doing your post-production and you're doing more cleanup than artistic changes. And I think just that $8.99 little razor is a great little tip that I know I've constantly thought that with the backlighting.
Oh,
So,
yes,
appreciate that.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I've that is one of the hardest things to edit. And like you said, I want to be able to focus on the creative side of the editing as opposed to the cleanup type of stuff. So that really helps save a lot of time. So because so much of my work is backlit and really helps. Another tool that you can use if you want to get this shiny type of look, you can use coconut oil, but I found that Pam works really well. It's like cooking spray on the model's skin. So you can get really shiny looks that way. And then a lot of times we also like to get a lot of movement within the model's hair just because it adds a real beautiful dimension. So this is a tool that I use a lot, and it's actually not a hair fan. It's actually a leaf blower. So it's called a Makita. You can get these at Home Depot. And they are battery operated, so they're not too powerful, but they just enough power to blow the model's hair really nicely to make it look like there's a little bit of movement within the image. So I use this Makita on every shoot that I do, especially on location. You might want to pick up a couple extra batteries for it, but literally this is way easier than using the huge hair fans that are, you know, that roll around. And it's interesting because I saw them using this Makita on some of the behind the scenes of the Victoria's Secret ads that they were shooting in Colorado a few months ago. So it must be a normal industry thing to use a leaf blower as a hair fan. So we use that quite often. So let's get into fashion. Yeah.
Let me ask you a quick question. Not a quick question, a request.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to move the cursor. Your cursor is right in the middle of the screen, and I really want to be able to see your images completely unobstructed, even by a small little arrow. So there we go.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
I didn't notice. That's
Thanks.
funny. Thank you. So we'll get into fashion a little bit. A lot of times to create movement within the dresses, a lot of people think that that is done using a fan, but these are actually shot working with an intern or assistant, and basically they will grab the end of the gown or veil or whatever it is you're shooting, and just on 3, basically I count to 3, and then they throw it up in the air. Excuse me, and then they, I have it on continuous settings. So you capture that beautiful motion of the gown or whatever it is, and they just kind of jump out of frame. So you do that about 30 times, you'll end up getting the right throw on the dress, which really looks beautiful. So I do that a lot. We did that here as well. The stylist is grabbing the gown and shaking it up and down to create that beautiful movement. So it's not like a static image. It really adds a lot of impact. So, and then beauty images, you know, denim, it's all shot very similarly. Denim's a little more rugged, and I like to capture the ruggedness of that denim. This was shot in Brazil. This is shot the exact same way by throwing up the gown and just capturing it in motion. So you can see how it all comes to life. And then I love using animals as props. You know, this location, I really wanted to have a white horse. I had actually purchased a unicorn horn off of Etsy to create this cool look where she's walking this unicorn into this barn, but the location wouldn't allow us to bring, it's a wedding venue, they wouldn't allow us to bring a horse in there. So I went with the next best thing, which was a Great Dane, spotted Great Dane, and ended up making the shot because it matched her dress really well since it was a polka dotted dress. So I'm always looking for things like that to kind of add interest in the images. Location is definitely a huge part of fashion photography because you want to have a really beautiful location to match whatever it is you're shooting. So we're going to actually work on this image today in the software, but you can see how this location added so much depth to this image. This is actually, my camera almost ended up getting drenched when I was shooting this particular shot. So you can see the bokeh from the water in the foreground. It really made for a cool shot. This is the only image that had that cool foreground bokeh because the water came up really quickly and almost drenched me and my camera. So, but yeah, this is at El Matador Beach, definitely one of my favorite locations. I mean, sometimes you end up, this was for a client that I shoot for a lot called Poopery. Never in my life have I scouted bathrooms before. So the location should definitely match the concept of what it is you're shooting. And for this particular shot, we had to scout bathrooms. So it's kind of funny because this model actually came into the casting and said, you know what, I want to be the next Poo Girl. So she ended up being the star that year of the Poopery ads. So pretty fun stuff. It's always interesting as a fashion photographer bringing things to life that are, you like bathroom spray. And then we'll get into lighting a little bit because lighting is definitely the love language of photography, in my opinion. You really can showcase a mood with lighting. That really is what lighting is about. So you really want to consider your vision before you go into lighting an image. So this is shot natural light, also at El Matador Beach. They have the most beautiful light at that location. So we used a reflector in the front to bounce light back into her face to really illuminate her eyes. So I tend to keep it pretty simple lighting wise. But sometimes you want to consider, you know, are you going for a moody look or are you going for a more happy-go-lucky kind of mood? This is a more moody image, so I wanted to opt for more moody lighting. And same with this particular image. We actually shot through a foam core or shot the strobe through a foam core to create a cool kind of shadowing on her face. So the lighting should always really match the vision, basically. For natural light, here are the basic settings that I use. I always try to shoot sunrise, sunset, midday, fine shade. That's really the best way. And then I always try to overexpose my skin tones by about a third or half a stop just to kind of clean up the skin a little bit so I don't have to spend as much time retouching. So for instance, I don't go with what the meter says or the camera is metering it at because sometimes it tends to look a little bit muddy and I like the model skin to really glow and look beautiful. Then I use backlight a lot with natural light. This is at the end of the day, sunset lighting. This is actually just my apartment pool, but it looks really beautiful when you add a long lens and beautiful lighting and a beautiful model. So you can really create beautiful images anywhere. This is a little bit more midday, but this model had some really great jawline and texture. It was abs, and so you can side light this really beautifully. I tend to only side light men because it tends to bring out more texture. Whereas with women, I like to use either butterfly lighting or backlighting because it's a little bit more flattering. It makes their skin look softer and less textured. So here's that beautiful backlight. So the sun is coming from the back, and then we usually use a reflector in the front, a strobe, a speed light, anything to bounce a little bit of light back into their face. Then always, I love props like flamingos. I found these on eBay. I'm always looking for cool props. So I tend to shoot backlit a lot. And you can see how it brings up the little hairs and things like that. But it's just a really beautiful, moody way to shoot. Then window light is one of my other absolute favorites. How the light can kind of come through the window. It's really beautiful and soft. And just really great way to capture portraits, especially in black and white. This is actually shooting through a window. So you can see how you get a nice little haze from the reflection. Natural light is just so beautiful. So the next kind of lighting that I use a lot is constant lighting. So these are the Stella Pros. So these are really nice constant light sources that basically you can capture the ambient light of the location as well as spotlighting your model in the frame. So this was an Audrey Hepburn editorial. So basically they're really nice LEDs, and you can, it's really nice because they're battery operated, so you can just take them around everywhere. Especially if you're shooting weddings or things like that, you can illuminate your portrait or illuminate the model that you're shooting and then capture that beautiful ambient light as well. So that's what I love about using those. And we also use a lot of RE M18s. It's basically the kind of light that they use on film sets and video work. But I also use them in stills because it's basically like putting your sun wherever you want it. So these were shot this way, just really beautiful, soft lighting. I love the REs, they look great. So this is basically using two REs, one in the front and then one under the stairs to create that cool kind of artsy lighting that creates the reflections on the edges.
So when it comes to your lighting, let me ask you some questions on that. Generally, constant lighting, I know the REs are brighter than the LEDs. That you showed earlier. Does that affect your decisions when it comes to f-stop, ISO, and of course, your shutter?
Absolutely. Yeah, basically with the constant lights, you can shoot a lot more wide open like you do with natural light because they're not quite as powerful as strobes. So if I'm wanting to shoot at like f2.8 or f3.5, the LEDs are really great for that. With the REs, you can get pretty bright. I mean, they're like, the M18s, I believe, are like 1800 watts or something like that. And so they're a lot brighter. So you can shoot and stop down a little bit more, like to f5.6, and still get really great depth of field. So yeah, it kind of, when I'm shooting strobes, a lot of times it's for like catalogs and like jewelry clients where the model and the jewelry needs to be in focus. So I'm having to shoot at like f8, f11. So freezing the frame with the strobe is really, really important. So yeah, but I love like, yeah, constant light's great for what you see is what you get, which is really nice. So you can kind of create the scene and light it and see what you see is what it's going to look like on film. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank
you. Yeah. So let's get into strobe a little bit. So these are the basic strobe settings that I use. Shutter is usually at 1/250th. With the new Pro Photos, you can actually use high-speed sync to shoot at an even higher shutter speed if you're trying to overpower the sun or something like that. But usually I'm around 1/250th. And basically you want to choose your aperture based on the depth of field desired. So like if I'm shooting jewelry, I might want to shoot at a f8, f11, like I said, to have everything in focus. But if I'm shooting portraits, I may want to go like the lowest power and shoot at like 2.8. I always use low ISO if possible. And then really and truly the way to learn strobe is just starting with one light at a time and trying different things with that one light and then adding an additional light until you kind of keep growing. So really and truly, I didn't know anything about strobes when I got out of college. It's all kind of been through trial and error ever since. So really kind of using one light at a time is really important. And I tend to keep my lighting pretty simple, basically. Here are some of my favorite modifiers for fashion photography. So I love the beauty dish, and I love the one with the white interior as opposed to the silver. The silver tends to be a little bit too harsh. The beauty dish is a soft yet contrasty type of light source. So this one is shot using the beauty dish. You can see how it has kind of hard edges, but it's still soft on her skin. So it's a really beautiful way to shoot, especially if your model has good skin. If you're shooting someone with blemishes and things like that you're having to work with, you might want to use for a softer, bigger light source like a softbox or an Octabank. So you can see that we can use the beauty dish in studio or on location. So you can see how that comes to life. That was for a calendar. And then umbrellas are a really soft light source. I don't use these as often, but sometimes on occasion, if I'm going for something really soft and ethereal, like this type of look, I might just use a big umbrella to kind of create this look. So I actually used Vaseline on the bottom of my filter to create this haze so it looks like she's floating. So I'm always trying to use fun little film tricks like that. Definitely don't put Vaseline on your lens, only put it on your filter, because you're never going to get all the Vaseline off of it. So you kind of have to have like a dedicated filter for the Vaseline if you want to create that kind of cool haze. You can also do this in, post-production. I just love to do it in camera if possible. So like I said, you can use soft boxes. There's a lot of different kinds. I use a lot of the octos, which are basically huge light sources. So basically keep in mind that the bigger your light source, the softer it's going to be. That's why I love natural light so much, because it has such a beautiful soft look to it, because the sun is so huge. So I'm using soft boxes a lot. I'll use a lot of strip boxes, which is the one on the right-hand side. Those are really great for edge lights. Use those quite often. So you can see here, this is shot with the octo. And basically the octo is, I'm standing in front of it. So the models are facing the light source, obviously, and I'm standing right in front of the octo. So you can actually, if you zoom in, you can see my reflection in their eyes, which is pretty cool. So it kind of just wraps around your subjects really beautifully. So here's this shot the same way with that octo, just a really soft light source. And one thing to keep in mind, I shoot a little bit of high key on occasion. Basically, it's that kind of bright white type of look. And if you're worried about getting footprints, these are really great tools. These basically are called panel board. It's almost like linoleum shiny flooring. And they're 14 bucks, and basically you can extend your seamless and then put one of these on top of it, and anything that hits it is going to just blow out. So you don't get any footprints or anything like that, because I could spend so much time just editing out footprints on a white background, especially when you're shooting a lookbook. So you can also wipe these down after a shoot. So they're a really great tool. I use these panel boards a lot when shooting white backgrounds. I also use the parabolic pretty often. It creates really beautiful, spectacular type of lighting, especially for shooting for hair companies. This was for a hair company called Macadamia. It kind of brings out the specular highlights of the hair, which is really nice, and that really beautiful hair texture. So I always use that type of light when shooting hair. And then I also like to get really experimental with my lighting. For instance, I used basically a filter on my lens, a star filter, and created some kind of crazy lens flares for this whole shoot. I think I showed a couple of these earlier, but it just has a really neat look to it. And then you kind of backlight it. I always put crystals in front of my lens a lot, create that cool haze. You can see how the crystals come to life here. Creates a really nice foreground bokeh. So light is really all about experimentation and trying different things to create really cool looks. So composition wise, I tend to keep it pretty simple as well. I use the rule of thirds quite often. I also use the color yellow a lot in my images. Love the color yellow. But really the rule of thirds is a really great way to do it. And then also with composition, if you're shooting for brands or magazines, you want to keep in mind, all the text that they may end up putting on your image. So for magazines, you want to leave a lot of space at the top and on the sides so that they can have their text in there and logos and things like that. With brands, a lot of times you want to get their layouts beforehand to know what they're going to be putting on the image. This is for a company called Virgin. Richard Branson's, he has so many companies, but this is for one of their healthcare type companies. And so they ended up putting this cool text across all of the images. So they wanted a lot of flair and things like that so they could have a lot of negative space. So really and truly, the best way is really to find out what your client is looking for. This was a recent shoot for a hospital. They're going to be using these images vertical, horizontal, super skinny. So you kind of have to shoot a little bit more pulled back than I normally would. So compositionally speaking, a lot of times the final use of the image will dictate the composition. And then white balance wise, I tend to shoot pretty warm. I love the kind of warm look. So for instance, the one on the left is just the auto white balance. I tend to shoot a lot in the shade white balance just because it makes all the models look really tan and their skin really glows really nicely. You can obviously, change this and, when you're editing, but I like to shoot it in camera. Hopefully you guys are all shooting raw. Raw is definitely the way to go, so you can make all kinds of different adjustments in post-production, which is really nice. So you can see how that shade white balance really makes the models glow and look really, really beautiful. And then sometimes, if you want to get really artsy, you can shoot at a completely different white balance than the situation. So this is actually shot in daylight, but I ended up using the fluorescent white balance to create this cool kind of mystical, ethereal type look. These were some of my very first fashion photographs, actually shot with a Nikon D70 camera and the 50mm lens. So you can see how the white balance really changes the look of the image and makes it more kind of dreamy. So I use a lot of different complementary colors in my work. And the reason is it tends to have a really beautiful look where it's three-dimensional. So basically complementary colors are across from each other on the color wheel. So for instance, if you use yellow and purple in the same image, it's going to really have a great three-dimensional look to the images. So different colors like red and green, kind of orange and blue. So if you use these different looks, they're going to really come to life really nicely. You can see how she really stands out from the background, red and greens. And then red is just such a powerful color. You have to kind of be careful with the way that you use red. If there's red in the background, your eye is going to go straight to it. So you really want to use red in a powerful way. So I tend to always have that as the main emphasis, is that red color. I love shades of blue really nicely in the images. So color definitely plays a huge aspect in photography and whatnot. So let's get into editing a little bit, because so much of the vision goes into the editing. So you really want to match your style of photography with the way that you edit your images. I tend to shoot a lot pretty much right in camera. I don't like to do a ton of swapping heads or, adding in backgrounds. I tend to love to shoot things like in the situation. So this was all shot in Brazil for this particular image. The models are there, the background's there, and then I just like to do basic, beautiful enhancements in the post-production side. And so, here are the before and afters using Luminar. And so you can see how it really comes to life. It looks a little bit flat on the left, and then I kind of bring out the sky and the details and everything using the Luminar software. And it's just amazing how easy it is to use. And I've really been impressed with just how creative you can get within this software. I'm going to talk a little bit about split toning, which is a really fun thing that I've been doing in fashion lately. So you can see the before and after. Basically, you shade your shadows a certain color and your highlights a certain color. So it's really kind of a cool look for, wedding photography, for boudoir photography, that sort of thing. It really kind of takes it to the next level. You can see how it was kind of green on the left, and then you use the split tones to really make it impact. And these are all shot the same way. You can see the before and after here. We're going to work on a couple of these images to show you guys how to do this. You can see how it looks a little bit muddy on the left, and then you add those split tones, and all of a sudden it's like the image comes to life really nicely. It looks high fashion. It's really fun. So these are all using the split tones. This is a recent shoot for Rock and Roll Denim. And for these particular images, I had shot them kind of backlit, so they had a real haze. So I used the dehaze filter within the software to really make it come to life. And then you can create really beautiful black and whites as well. We're about to do that here in a moment. You can also add some cool sun rays to your images. That's one of my favorite things within the Luminar software, is create these cool sun rays. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that as well. And then we'll go through some of the presets that I have developed, so you can download those and try them on your images to see what they look like. So my book is available on Amazon. Like you guys said earlier, if you're interested in getting into fashion and commercial photography, it's definitely everything you need to know about that. So Abba, should we go ahead and go into the software?
I think that would be great. And
Cool.
that was like a college course in fashion photography that would normally take people a semester to just touch on. That was an amazing amount of information. I really appreciated that.
Oh, thank you. It's kind of a crash course.
And I love some of your old school techniques, the Vaseline on your filter and
Yes.
putting things in front of the lens and even using some of the star filters and whatnot. It's nice to see that everything doesn't have to be done in post and that you can do a lot of that creativity on the
Yeah,
shoot. So that was cool.
absolutely. Thank you. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm trying to get the screen here.
Just go ahead and click on the little green button.
Oh,
That
there we
should
go.
maximize.
That's a way
And
easier
there you
to
go.
do. That's perfect.
I'm all about easy. I'm all about easy.
Yes, I love that. So let's go into the basics. So I'm going to pull up this image, which needed some work, and within the software here. So, okay, we are good to go. So basically, I came up with my own custom workspace, which you guys can also download. Abby, y'all are gonna post a link to that after this,
Yes,
right?
we'll post a link. It'll be on the website when on the repeat performances but also at the very end, Lori will show where folks can find your presets and your workspace. So
Perfect.
we'll definitely share the location for that at the end of the webinar.
Oh, perfect. That's great. So my custom workspace is pretty basic. You know, you have your basic develop modes, the saturation, vibrance, clarity. The details enhancer is a really amazing tool that I've been using to bring out the details, split toning, and then LUT mapping, adjustable gradient. So these are just a part of my basic workspace. So for this particular image,
and I'm going to just jump in for a second for the folks who are new to Luminar, unfamiliar with the workspaces, is that the workspace allows the photographer to bring in all the filters they normally use without any settings on the filters. So that's one of the cool things, is that it saves time. And so you'll be able to download, as we talked about that a moment ago, but none of the sliders are set. So it's just really, these are the tools that Dixie uses when she gets started.
Yeah, that's very well said. Yeah, absolutely. So for this particular image, it's got that kind of haze going on. So basically, I am going to add a layer and then a filter. And what's nice about this is you can just search the filters or type it in. So I was just typing in dehaze, which comes up really easily. And for this image, the dehaze will really, really help. So you can add that filter to it, and you see how it makes such a huge difference to take out that haziness, because this image was shot using strobe, and the strobe must have bounced off my lens and created that craziness, that haze to it. So that's a really nice look to it. So I use the dehaze filter on this one, and then as far as any other adjustments, I would probably just desaturate this a little bit. So saturation, vibrance, and basically just desaturate just a little bit. And really those are the main things that I would do to that particular image, just keeping that very simple. One thing that I love about the Luminar software is the ability to look before and after what you've done to that image. So you can use the little eye here, and you can also use this slider to see what it looks like before and after. So you can see what you've done as you're working. And one other really great tool is the fact that you can, go back in your history. So you can literally see every single thing that you've done up until that point. So you can go back to the very beginning and just, see everything that you've done. Because a lot of times I'll get lost in my work and end up doing something, and then I'll forget what I did on this particular image, and I'll want to go back. So it's a really nice tool to be able to do that. So let's open a new image, and let's do some sun rays. So this is the coolest thing ever. Really, really neat effect that I've enjoyed working with. So I'm going to add the sun rays filter. Here we go. It's a creative filter. Okay, so you can see how when I click on sun rays, super simple, it adds some kind of craziness going on. So you definitely want to make it look natural. This looks a little bit hokey right now, but basically you can change where the sun rays are coming from. So for instance, for this particular image, we ended up lighting it with strobe. So we put a strobe behind the tree. So you can see you get that hair light, but you can't really tell where that light is coming from. It looks a little bit unnatural. So the sun rays will basically look like the sun is coming through the trees. So you can see how you can change the look of it. So for me, I think the sun would be coming from like the top right through the trees. So you can see how you change the X and Y axis to make it look like, you know, the sun is coming from that way. So that's a really neat tool. You can also add warmth to it if you want it to look more warm. And really, I tend to keep it pretty subtle, but I think a little bit of warmth is kind of nice. You can change the length of them if you want a lot more. You can change the number of sun rays coming through, which is really cool. So if you have a cool backlit image, these are really neat. These are so, you know, hard to create in camera because you kind of have to stop down quite a lot. But within the software, you can just create in post-production with it, which is so nice. So I really enjoyed working with that. Then you can also change the radius of the sun, the glow amount, the warmth of the actual sun. So there's just so much you can do. You can randomize it. So really what I love about it, just getting in here and playing, you know, just getting creative with these different filters. Abba, do you have anything to add on the sun rays? Did I touch on everything there?
No, I think the big thing is playing with it to get it just right. And then the other thing that is nice is sometimes creating a mask so you can control where the sun rays are actually seen and not seen if you have an unnatural highlight.
Absolutely. Cool. So I think that's probably what I would do to that image. That probably sums it up there. So let's
I love the fact that it's subtle changes that you're making.
Yeah.
And yet it makes a dramatic change in the feel of the image.
Yeah, definitely.
That's one of the takeaways, I think.
Yeah, I tend to keep, I mean, I love simplicity. I don't, you know, I love to be out there shooting. So I like to keep the creative process of post-production pretty simple. So, I mean, just little simple things you can see just the difference in those of the overall mood of the image, how it creates such a beautiful look to it. So this looks a little bit more flat. That has a little bit more dynamic, a dynamic feel to it. Just little subtle changes make all the difference. So let's go into this image. This was, like I said, a recent shot that I did at El Matador. And I just started playing with these. This particular shot was my favorite because of the bokeh in the foreground from the water droplets. So on this one, I'm going to show you guys how to do split toning. Basically, go into your filters and click split toning, creative. And all you really need to do is, here we are. I'm going to minimize those guys. So you're basically wanting to create a look where the highlights are a certain color and then your shadows are a certain color. So for instance, I'm going to start with the shadows. So the shadows are like here around where the rocks are. So my favorite look is to create a cool deal where the shadows are kind of have a purpley bluish tint. So you can see how if you go overboard, it gets too much, but you can see what it does basically. The shadows are now purple, which is quite cool. And then you can make your highlights a certain color. So my favorite color combination, going back to color theory, purple and yellow or purple and orange. So we'll make the highlights sort of a yellowish orange. So you can see that come to life really nicely. And then you kind of just got to play with it to get it right. And then what I'm going to do when I do split toning, a lot of time I will then go to saturation. Let's see. Perfect. And then just take down the saturation just slightly, just to kind of give it that cool high fashion look. So it's really and truly as easy as that. And it's funny, I had actually already posted this image without split toning on Instagram, and then I started playing with it more and ended up here. And now I wish I would have posted this version because I like it a lot better than the just normal look. So you can see it really kind of adds a cool impact to the image. So that's really the basics of how you do split toning. You can also change the colors of everything if you want your shadows to be more turquoise or blue. My favorite just currently is that sort of purplish color. It just tends to stand out, especially for lingerie photography. But we're going to kind of end there, I think, on that particular image.
Now, in your presets, if I recall, you did apply split toning, so they can actually kind of jump to the end, can't they?
Yeah, they totally can.
and see your secret color choices as well as contrast. So that's one of the nice things about the presets that you built. It has your secret.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, all the secrets are in there. Absolutely. So let me open one more image. Let me do this one, and then we'll go into the presets. How are we doing on time?
Are good. It is 52 past the hour, so we have another good 10 minutes for us to continue to learn your tips and tricks.
Great. That's awesome. Okay, so we will do the same thing on this one. Actually, so those are all my basics here. So let's just add filters. Oh, sorry. Split toning. There we go. So we're going to do the same thing here. So you can just see how it applies to different images. There we go. So it kind of has that purple type of look, and then we will take out some of the saturation. Let's see here, and then desaturate it. So that's really the basics of split toning. It's so simple. I almost hate teaching it, but you know, it's little things that really can make a big impact.
It's interesting that you say you hate teaching it, because I think it is one of the most confusing things for a lot of photographers to leverage that filter. So what you take for granted, you learn much from.
Oh, good. That's awesome. Cool. So let's go ahead and open an image, and then we can look at some of the presets that I've created and how it kind of works on an image. So this is a portrait that I shot. It's interesting. The D850 shoots in different formats, and I shot this one in the square format. It's really fun for social media and for creating cool portraits. So the first preset, I came up with some really silly names for these. This one's called Yowza. And basically, it creates kind of that split tone type of look for you with just the click of a button. So it's really simple. And one of the things that I love about doing the presets is that you can change the opacity of them. So for instance, some of them might be a little bit too much depending on what your image looks like, the original image. So you can kind of dial it back. So you go to like 50% opacity, and then it's a little bit more subtle. So you can see that there if you want a little bit more subtle type of look. So that's definitely one of my favorites. The Yowza preset just creates that nice glowy look with the oranges and the purples, which is really nice. And then my favorite black and white is the rugged black and white. And it's super contrasty. You know, I've upped the clarity quite a lot because with black and whites, you can get away with that. And it just creates beautiful texture. And one thing that I love of black and white is just the ability to really get to the soul of the person. You're not distracted by the clothes or anything like that, especially when, you know, your subject is making eye contact with the camera. You can really create some beautiful portraits and really capture that soulfulness with black and whites. You can also kind of dial back the opacity if you want more of a desaturated type of look, which is kind of cool too. I do a lot of desaturation within my editing. So that's really cool. And then dripping in gold is just basically a really warm type of preset. So you can see how you really warm up the image. So if you're shooting kind of, I mean, in Texas, I shoot a lot of cowboy stuff in the stockyard, stuff that's really kind of rugged. So the gold filter will really make their skin tan, it'll make, you know, their hair glow. So that's a really nice type of look. So I use that quite often. You can also dial it back, which is sometimes needed. The Warrior is a little bit different of a split tone. It's more of a turquoise shadows with kind of a warmer highlights. So that can be really neat for certain type of images. Kind of
And
like
in addition to dialing those back in the presets, you can also modify the actual filters on the right side that you've built.
Absolutely. Glad that you said that. So you can, you know, change different things here within the actual presets. So yeah, very good point. That's definitely important.
So they can kind of do the Dixie Dixon 2.0 modification.
Yeah, that's right. They can make it their own. Absolutely. That's awesome. So this one's a real desaturated type of look, kind of makes your image look silver overall. So I call this one Silver Lining. So you can change that up a little bit and enhance it or make it your own. This one is a really cool type of look. It's even more of that purple tones. Been really into that purple tones. Maybe it's because I went to TCU. I'm not sure, but really enjoyed working with that one. And then one of my favorite things to do also is just sepia toned, because I just think that sepia just looks really beautiful for black and whites. If you want to kind of add a little bit oomph to your black and whites. So you can see how that comes to life. And then the last one is another version of that kind of rugged look that's kind of desaturated, really warm. So really, truly, all of these presets really go along with my style of photography. So you can kind of get in there, make them your own, make them go with your style. But they're really great starting points when you get into working with an image to see where you can go with it. So yeah, I think that I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to say about these.
No, I think wow is the answer. I'm not sure.
Cool.
I think the question is, how can I make my pictures better with these presets? And the answer is wow. Actually, they're completely unrelated, wow, in the question. But this has been really eye-opening. The folks that are watching or listening have learned so much from just the start of preparing for the shoot with the artboards all the way through your strategies when shooting and your strategies in post. It's been quite an educational hour.
Great.
I'm going to actually throw it back to Lori because she can show us where people can actually find those presets and the workspaces that you created on the Skylum website.
Great.
But I do want people to continue to check out your site. They can also follow you on Instagram, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And
under
your Instagram?
Yeah, it's under Dixie Dixon wasn't available, so it's under I am Dixie Dixon.
Perfect. So I am Dixie Dixon is you if they want to follow. And let me throw it back to Lori so we can see exactly where we can find those presets and workspaces.
Great.
Dixie, wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Nice. You got some nice compliments from everyone as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So as a special treat, Dixie actually created some presets and workspaces for us. So I'm going to show you where you can find that. So if you go to our skylum.com website, you'll see over here on the left-hand side is a menu. If you click on that drop-down menu, you'll see a little link here. It's called Luminar Marketplace. And by clicking on Luminar Marketplace, you'll be able to see a bunch of free and paid for presets that are available. Dixie's offered for free some presets here, so all I have to do is click on Learn More. And all those presets that she showed you before and after, you can kind of scroll through here, you know, if you want to take a quick look at them and download them. Super easy to download. You just click on that. It'll go to wherever you want to save it. Double click and it'll automatically install into your Luminar program. So that's fantastic. The other thing too is she has offered, I'm going to go back over here to the Luminar Marketplace, some workspaces. And basically workspaces are available. They're her favorite filters basically that show up when you click on a workspace. And so she's got some workspaces available. If you go to Learn More, I can scroll through a couple of these, but you could just go ahead and download those as well. So those are available. So don't forget, she's got her beautiful website if you want to see more of her gorgeous images, get some inspiration. Her contact information I think is there as well. And then on Amazon, I just pulled this up. This is her fashion and lifestyle photography that's available. So it looks like it's a little discount on Amazon. So that should be really great as well. Okay, Abba, do you have anything to say before we close out as well?
Well, what I've learned the most is that if I'm walking through a hardware store in Texas and I see somebody that looks like Dixie, it most likely is Dixie.
Right.
Yes.
Leverage that.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. You can always find me at Home Depot.
I mean, I love the fact that you have those DIY solutions, and those are great. Dixie, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing your energy to this webinar, and I am dying to try out some of the techniques that you taught us. I want to just thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Great.
This was fun.
And thanks everyone for joining us. We hope that you'll join us for another webinar. Okay, thanks Dixie and Abba. We'll see you all later. Bye-bye.
Bye.